On a cold February morning in Indianapolis, Tony Karitzis woke up, got dressed, loaded his sawed-off shotgun, and drove to his bank. He wasn't there to steal anything. He was there to take his life back. American Hostage is a new podcast starring me, John Hamm, that tells the true story of one man who channeled the rage of a nation and took justice into his own hands. Follow American Hostage wherever you get your podcasts, or you can binge all 8 episodes right now on Amazon Music or Wondery Plus.
Station with locations in Noonan, Georgia, WQEE 99.1 FM, Classic Rock and Sports. LaGrange, Georgia, and Lynette, Alabama's WBRQ 91.9 FM, Gospel and Blues. Lineville, Alabama's WZEV 90.5 FM, Solid Gold Hits. Andalusia, Alabama's WDWZ 89.3 FM, Big Talk in Andalusia. Jordan Communication also owns and operates WQMK TV 18, home of Retro TV Classics. Serving Opelika, Auburn, and Lynette, Alabama, West Point, Georgia. Coming soon, JC Sports Networks, home of Southern Sports. And in the near future, Rush TV Network, featuring action and horror classics on the internet and Ruco TV. Continue to tune in for more with Jordan Communications, your #1 local entertainment broadcast stations. WQEE 99.1 FM Noonan, WBRQ LaGrange, WZEV 90.5 FM Lineville, JC Sports Networks.
Blue skies smiling at me, nothing but blue skies do I see.
Good morning. I'm Gail Nankervis, your host of the Less Sucky Divorce radio show, and I'm the owner of Blue Skies Mediation in Peachtree City. I help people get a less sucky divorce. Not you, but maybe your neighbor or friend or sister. I'm a certified divorce financial analyst and a licensed family mediator, and I use these skills with my clients to help them get a professional divorce without escalating fees and emotions. My goal is to help them get through the divorce process while retaining their sanity, their assets, and most importantly, their integrity. So the topic of divorce for a radio show might seem a little weird, but with more than 50% of marriages ending in divorce, I thought it was important to share information and resources with the community. Even though divorce is very common, people don't typically talk about it while they're going through it. You usually just hear the nightmare stories at the end of it. So my goal is to change the way people in our community get divorced through educating them about different aspects, the process, the financial side, the emotional side, and everything in between. I'm excited to be here today, and we will be right back with the Less Sucky Divorce radio show. Good morning. This is Gail, your host of the Less Sucky Divorce radio show. I'm excited to be here this beautiful Friday morning with my friend Sarah Marchand. Sarah is a realtor with Berkshire Hathaway, and she has a lot of experience helping people buy and sell homes in the area. But one of her expertise, from her own personal experience as well as from that of her clients, is helping people who have gone through divorce buy and sell a house. That can be more complicated than your standard client. And as we know, selling a house is very common in divorce. It's one of the biggest factors to take into consideration when doing a settlement agreement. And so Sarah's here to share some of her wisdom with us today about how to make this, what could be a complicated transaction, what could be an emotional transaction, how we can make it better, smoother, easier, how they can keep more of their money, whatever, all the good things that you do for your clients are, Sarah. So I'm glad you're here today, and instead of me babbling on, why don't you introduce yourself to us, please?
Yes, hi Gail. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's wonderful to be here. So, did you know that there's roughly 800,000 divorces each year in the U.S.?
Oh, I thought that was just in Noonan alone.
It might well be. So it's kind of interesting when you look at those numbers and think that's every year 800,000 people go through a divorce, and what do you know? Half of those have houses to sell. So do you know how hard it is to sell a house in a divorce when you go through a rotten divorce with a spouse that you really don't want to deal with anymore?
Well, that's the thing. Then part of the reason I have this show is to help educate people about that, because most people, when they enter divorce, they hire a lawyer and they're focused on all the legal aspects of it. But we've got emotional and financial, and that's really, those are the sides that the house is caught up in. There's so much emotion to it, in addition to financial gains, losses, risks that go along with it.
And the stories that I can tell you about people and what they do to their homes when they're selling them, just so that their spouse will not get the benefits of it, are crazy.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, imagine this emotional divorce. What is the one thing that you have left between you, apart from the children?
Well, I like to think that they're going to focus on the children.
Well, a lot of people do, and a lot of people don't. So the other thing is finances. What is the biggest financial, thing that you probably will have in your life?
Right, definitely the
It's
house.
a house. So when you come to split a house, let's say, Mr. Jones and Mrs. Jones go to get a divorce. Mr. Jones didn't want the divorce. Mrs. Jones did, or vice versa. How are they going to get back at their spouse? By doing something to the house. And there's so many ways of really sort of like screwing up a sale when you're getting divorced. And it's so prevalent and hard to deal with. So it's very important that you get somebody that can understand all of these things. So,
okay, well, I don't want you to give anybody any bad ideas, but could you give some examples to help prepare people for this? I think I was lucky that when I got divorced, my ex-husband was very respectful of the house, and actually up to a certain point would come and help with some of the maintenance. I was very lucky in that regard. But that's obviously not what you're talking about.
Well, there have been stories where people have taken chainsaws to the house and literally tried to halve it with a chainsaw. Can you imagine that? No. So we don't want that. So you're the mediator. You're the one that's soothing the waters here. How do you go about soothing the waters with a couple that is fighting about little things?
Oh, well, I mediate kind of, instead of traditional mediator that mediates at one big sit down, everybody stares awkwardly at each other and has an uncomfortable session. I mediate almost daily. It's little phone calls throughout the whole process where we're discussing the house, and as you know, because I've talked about my process with you before, I start off by doing a financial analysis. And as I'm doing the financial analysis, I'm talking to both parties, both the husband and the wife, and getting their input on it. And by the time I have a financial analysis with a recommendation, they already kind of know what is expected of them, more or less. I can't provide legal advice. I'm not a lawyer, but I can tell them how things will work out in an equitable division state.
Right.
And so that includes the house. So by that point, they've already told me their preferences. And so we factored that in. They both told me what they want for themselves or for their children. And so it's not a surprise. Whereas a lot of people who are getting divorced using attorneys, most of the times are just, they both want the house, and it's not always in their best interest. So I like to think the people I work with are more reasonable than the people who come and tear down the cabinets with chainsaws.
Most people are.
Yeah.
Most people do sort of like get to the point where it's like, okay, this is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is, basically. And, you do need a good mediator. You need a good realtor who understands all of this and who can, in a sense, also mediate a little bit between the couple, because, you have to sign paperwork with both. It's not just one. And when you come to sell the house, they both have to agree upon the price. I mean, that is a huge one when you're dealing with a divorced couple, because the higher the price, the more money they're going to get in their pockets at the end of the day, if they're separating all of the assets down the center kind of thing. So these are things that, it's kind of, you have to kind of juggle with people.
Yeah. One thing I've found is the person who's maybe not keeping the house really doesn't care about what the price is. They want it over with, and they want their share of the equity.
Well, even with the share of the equity, they want the price to be as high as they possibly can, because they're going to get a share.
But they kind of just want to be done with it, and so they don't care if the other one gets, as we call it, screwed.
Yeah, I mean, there are those couples as well that are bitter, and obviously if one of them is, financially better off than the other and they are unhappy about the divorce, then there's definitely those times. But as a realtor, you have to sort of like literally talk to them and tell them, sit them down and say, listen, the market value on this property is at such. If you bring it down, then you're only doing a disservice to everybody else in your neighborhood. So it's not just about doing a disservice to your ex-wife, ex-husband, whoever. It's doing a disservice to the neighborhood. And we don't want that. So we will discuss that with people and bring them to a good kind of, ending situation. But it can be a bit hair-raising sometimes because people do only think about themselves.
Right.
And that's really a sad thing, but it's human nature. So,
well, there are basically 3 different outcomes that a couple can agree upon for selling a house. Would you like to talk about those?
Yes. So there are definitely ways to separate the assets when it comes to selling a house, and the main 3 reasons are both parties either sell it and split the equity, which is the easiest way because you come to an agreement where, okay, your house has been valued at $500,000, you're going to sell it for $500,000, you both get, you pay off the mortgage, you pay off the taxes, whatever else is on the house, and then you basically split the proceeds. And so you both know exactly what you're going to get. So in that situation, I feel like the realtor can be extremely helpful in letting them both know what the expenses will be. Absolutely.
Because if people think they're getting, let's say they're clearing $200,000 of equity, and they start planning their future thinking they have $100,000 in their pocket.
Right.
The reality is they have to pay the realtor fees, that maybe they've had staging. Do you ever deal with staging?
Absolutely, all the time. Staging is the best way to sell a house. I mean, people have very unique tastes in stuff in their house. And sometimes it takes an eye to go in there and sort of go through all of that stuff and, put some of it away, put some of it in storage, put it in a box, put it in an attic while they're showing houses, because the amount of people that don't actually have vision and literally cannot see past the stuff.
I'm that person.
Yes, it's kind of mind-blowing, but people literally walk in and they see other people's stuff and that's what they imagine themselves living with. They don't realize that stuff is going and you've just got the walls and the floors to deal with. They see the furniture, they see the pictures on the wall, they see the trinkets in the shelves. They see it all and they walk in and they're like, ooh, I don't like that, or I don't like this. And I'm thinking, you're not buying that. Stop looking at that.
Right. It's hard for people that aren't visual. George Carlin has a funny video out that obviously it's old, but he has a video, you can see it on YouTube. It's called Stuff, and it's all about stuff because that's what the house is. And the thing that struck me the funniest was that your stuff is your stuff, but somebody else's stuff is a different S word.
Right, exactly.
We don't call it stuff. It's a different S word.
Yes.
And so when you go into a house... So take that eclectic art off the wall. And what are some other hints for getting a house ready to sell?
A lot of people live in their homes and they haven't decorated it for a while, so they're not up to date. So we suggest typically painting. Paint over that bright orange wall. Nobody wants bright orange anymore.
I've had one of those too.
Take out the shag pile carpet or whatever. Just refresh the house, bring it up to par to today's standards. The best way to do that is if you have a new build in your neighborhood, in your city, like Noonan has quite a few little areas where they're building new homes. Go look through their model homes, see how people are decorating, see what was selling. This is the best way to kind of gauge whether your house is up to par with what's going in the market at this point. But typically we say very clean, clean the house. Oh. Clean.
Every
Put
day.
lots of air freshener around. The best way to sell a house is to bake some cookies in the oven because it gives the house that aroma of home. And when you walk into a house that smells like, apple pie or cookies, or it depicts the imagination of you living there with your family or whatever, Maybe it reminds you of grandma's kitchen or whatever, something to connect you with some memory that you have. And I always tell people either burn candles that smell really nice, or smells something fruity or, tasty. Little things like this that make people go, oh, okay, that makes sense, because you walk into a house that literally doesn't have a light on or no scent to it, and you've got all this awful furniture around that's sort of like, your grandpa might have liked that, but it's not really
you can see the butt imprints in the sofa.
Exactly, or they've got the plastic covers on it, it's like, okay, and you've got cigarettes burning in the ashtray or something, very dated. All these things turn people off, and the house might be absolutely stunning. I mean, just the bare bones of the house are great, but people's stuff, not so good. So all this thing, make it very clean, burn some really nice scented candles. The lighting is a good place to start as well. Put your lamps on, put the lights on, not the main lights. Main lights in the house can be a little bright, but put your lamps on. Take your pictures off of the walls that, you're showing your kids when they're little, with the dog playing in the backyard. People can't imagine themselves in somebody else's house, so take those pictures down. So all of this comes into staging. Staging is very important, I'd say.
Yeah.
So.
I was glad I did it. I lived in a country club community, and when we got divorced and I sold the house, I was a little nervous about finances, and I didn't want to invest in a stager.
Right.
But when I looked at the houses around me, I couldn't compete. We had been in that house 15 years, and maybe I wouldn't go so far as to say we had butt prints on the sofa, but maybe just a couple steps better than that. And it was probably the best thing I could do. They brought in the weirdest turquoise furniture, and I thought, who wants a turquoise sofa? That's so weird. But it was open to the window where you could see the pool. And as soon as you walked in, you almost felt like you were already in the pool area. It was one of the best decisions I made for trying to sell that house.
Yep.
But I got way off topic with the staging. I was just talking about additional expenses that could come. So when they're splitting the equity, we're back to the sale of the house, and they're splitting the equity. What are some of those expenses that come off of
obviously, your taxes. I mean, did you pay your taxes up to date? Those are very important. Obviously, if you don't pay your taxes, you can lose your house, period. Do you have any liens on the house?
What does that mean? Some people don't know what a lien is.
Well, a lien is something that would happen to you if, let's say, you didn't pay a bill, or if you had some construction work done on your house. Let's say you remodeled your kitchen or something, and the contractor paid all the people but maybe didn't pay one or something. They could actually put a lien on your house even though it's not your fault. So all these things need to be checked out before you sell your house to make sure that somebody else hasn't slipped a lien on it because somebody owes them some money.
Okay. So it's basically businesses that have been unpaid.
Yeah.
And the way to get paid is they put the lien on your house.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often, but it could happen. If you've had some work on your house and you've paid a contractor and he's supposed to have paid everybody else, but he may have not done or mistakenly or whatever, somebody could have put a lien on your house that you don't know about.
Right.
If you haven't paid, certain bills yourself, they can come and put a lien. If you've got a judgment against you, there's a lien on your house. Yeah. All those things.
Yeah. Thank you. It took me a good while before. It really was when I started working in finances, and in particular with people going through divorce, that I learned more about liens.
Yeah.
And so that's why I thought maybe some of our listeners are not as familiar with them. I had a client one time who was referred to me after her divorce was final, and she had been awarded a beach house that was worth about $500,000, and it was paid for, so she could decide whether she wanted to live there and just pay the taxes and live there, or if she wanted to sell it and have the pot of money. And her husband was that same week, he was going to the courthouse to sign a quitclaim deed and sign the property over to her. And in that moment, she realized he had stopped paying property taxes several years earlier, so he had about 3 years of delinquent taxes on the house. And he was also supposed to pay her lawyer fees to the tune of $90,000, which he did not pay. So the law firm put a lien on the house too. So by the time he was getting ready to sign that $500,000 home over to her, it was actually only worth $250,000. Mm-hmm. And at that point, it was out of my control, and so I told her, you need to reach out to your lawyer immediately and make sure he doesn't follow through with this, or talk to the the county and make sure that he can't sign this over to you because he still owes you that $250,000.
Right.
But so I would imagine when you take on a new client, you have a process where you when you're estimating the value of the house, you're making sure there's no liens on it.
Yeah, you can check. I mean, you can absolutely check. I mean, it's unfortunate, and it does happen more so than you realize. But, you know, you would know. I think you would get something in the mail. You would be told if you haven't opened your mail. Like, I have a thing where I avoid my mail sometimes. It just piles up.
Unless it's one of those fake checks. It looks like the IRS is sending fake checks. So.
Yes. But, you know, it's like go to your mail that you haven't opened and open that up and make sure you don't have anything in there that's, you know, that could be hindering you from selling your home or anything like that. So, but yeah, I mean, like, you know, that's another case of nasty divorces. People do things to people that really you wouldn't do it to anybody else, but just because they've hurt your ego or bruised you in some way, you're going to get them back. And not nice, really underhanded, but people do it. And that's why I said there's been cases where people have taken a chainsaw to the furniture and cut this couch in half and said, you can have that half, I'm having this half. Or, you know, try to, you know, it's like the bed, cut it down the middle because they're so angry that they're getting divorced. It's not cool. It's really not cool. Anyway, what other, let me think about some other prices or things you have to pay off. Is obviously your mortgage, taxes, lawyers' fees, the realtor's fees. I mean, you know, people kind of cringe at that as well, and that's understandable, but a lawyer gets paid, everybody else gets paid. I mean, realtors do a lot of work, and you don't realize it.
Yeah.
I mean, the work that we do behind the scenes, all the paperwork, the amount of time we put in trying to sell this, the marketing, all of this stuff, it adds up. So you can definitely choose to use a discount brokerage where you will get a discount service, and they will put your house, and I will say right now it's like a great time for sellers because sellers can just put the house on the market and they're going to have people wanting to buy it because it's such low inventory. But in a buyer's market, very bad idea to go with a discount broker because you are not going to sell your house very quickly at all. And just to know that. Seller's market, yeah, you can do that. Buyer's market, do not do that. But a good realtor is going to get you the best price. The good realtor is going to sit down and mediate with you and help you and go through everything with you, and you're not going to have any issues. A discount brokerage is not going to sit there and hold your hand and put you through all of the things that you need to know. They're just going to list it and say goodbye.
Right.
So those are the differences.
And I'm sure, I know Berkshire Hathaway deals with all kinds of houses, but I know they've got a special area that's just for luxury houses too. So I would imagine the amount of training you have to, the amount of avenues you have to market houses these days. Yes. Remember back when the only thing to do was sending a flyer in the mail. Right. But now there's all different sites to list on, and in addition to just MLS.
Absolutely. And I will say Berkshire Hathaway is, I mean, I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be mistaken, so whatever, I think it's the 8th largest company in the U.S. It's one of the largest, it is, if not one of, I think it is the largest real estate company, but Berkshire Hathaway is obviously, it has a lot of other different companies under its umbrella. We have such amazing training. I used to work for Coldwell Banker, and I thought Coldwell Banker had good training. Berkshire Hathaway knocks it out of the park. It is amazing what they make you go through. You have to train on all the laws, everything else. I mean, things that as a smaller brokerage, these smaller real estate companies don't have the resources like Berkshire Hathaway has all of the resources. So we have a lot of people that are support to us. So when things go wrong or whatever, we can just pick up the phone and make a phone call, and we will have that support. Whereas if you're in a smaller real estate company, they won't have all of that support. So, and I'm not here to sit down and sort of like, you know, promote Berkshire Hathaway. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just explaining to you things that could happen, especially in a divorce case when you're dealing with such a tender, you know.
Right. Well, it gets back to, as you said, the price. People balk at the price of it, but yet they're paying those lawyer fees to get divorced.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And so there's a reason there's a reason you pay for that. You pay for the training that you have, the expertise, the different avenues. Even somebody who wants to sell their house on their own, they might throw up some pictures online, but it's not the same as having a very targeted audience where you know some people from New York are trying to move down here, and so you're marketing even up there, for example.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, it is all about the marketing, and Berkshire Hathaway has the best. So let's move on to the next way of selling your house in a divorce situation. The other way you can do it is if both parties decide to, one of them buys each other out. It's like, I had a client we just closed today actually, and his wife bought him out of their house. So she managed to stay in the house. She gave him the cash, half of the value of the house, and he went and bought another house. That can happen too. Usually happens when both parties have a job, and a good job, and they can afford to do that. So with them, for instance, we got an appraiser to come out and appraise the house. And the other thing about appraisals as well, don't forget, if you're refinancing, an appraiser will come out and appraise it for the bank's value. So you want an appraiser that's going to come out and appraise it for market value. There is two different prices on a house.
Okay.
A bank value is banks will lowball their value because, that's just the way when they're refinancing, it's the way they look at it. A market value appraisal will get you the market value, and that's what you want to get when you're going through a divorce. You want the market value, not the bank value.
Is that where they do comps from the neighborhood?
Well, you'll have a real appraiser come out. Not all real estate agents can appraise the house. We can do comparable market analysis, and we can put together what the market will hold and sustain. But a true appraiser will come out and measure your house. They'll go through all the rooms. They'll look at the condition of the house, and they'll do a whole, a report on what your house is actually valued at. So,
So, and then if somebody is buying the other one out of the house, typically, like you said, they both have income. And there's usually a pot of money that the money may have come from when they were dividing different pot of assets, rather than splitting everything in half 50-50 with that chainsaw. You could maybe say, okay, you're getting to keep this extra $100,000 for the house, but I'm going to take this extra $100,000 from this account. Yes. And that's how you're able to make it even.
And that's where your job comes in as the mediator. As a mediator, you're going to sit down with them and say, okay, you're going to buy the house from Mr. Jones. Mrs. Jones is going to buy Mr. Jones the house and keep the house. Mr. Jones is going to take $150,000 in lieu of giving the house over. Is there anything else you want to take? Do you know what I mean? It's like you'll sit down with them and discuss that. My job as a realtor is not to get into their personal finances.
Right.
That's not my job. It's not my business to talk about their personal finances.
And so one thing I do help them figure out is because, there can be emotional ties to the house, is we put together a budget to see if they even can afford to stay in the house. It's one thing to buy it out and now you have it, but you still have ongoing payments, and you've got not just the mortgage, but you've got the lawn care, you've got the insurance, you've got taxes. If you're in an HOA, you've got to pay that. Tennis fees, whatever else you're paying, it's a lot more expensive than you think, and you may be aware that your spouse did a lot more around the house than you thought when you were married, and all of a sudden now you have to pay other people to do that. But another complication for that one spouse buying out the other is that if they're going to refinance it into their own name, they better have the income to support that, they can get approved for that loan. Or even at that point, even if they can get approved, what if interest rates have gone through the roof? Maybe you were making that mortgage payment at 3%, but now it's 5.5%.
And that's so prevalent in today's market, because last year we had interest rates at 2.8%. Right now the interest rates are just over 5%. It's almost doubled from last year. So if you're going through a divorce at this time, not a good time, because you might have refinanced your house last year down to 2.8, 2.9%. Now you're going through a divorce, you're selling your house, you're having to buy something else, you're having to buy at 5%. That's definitely,
it'll add a few $100s to your payment, for
absolutely.
sure. So that gets us to a reason number 3 about selling the house, the option number 3 is that when you continue to own the house jointly, then you avoid having to refinance. You avoid having that interest rate possibly jack up.
Yes.
But there's a lot of other complications.
There are, because, you have to be in really good terms with your ex to be able to do that. Not a lot of people can do that. But basically, if you decide to, let the children stay in the house and the school system and whatever, and you decide that, okay, so my spouse cannot functionally sell the house and get another house at this point, and I'm okay to do that, then I'm going to move out. I'll get my own place to live, but we'll share the price of the mortgage. So now my ex is expected to pay for half of the mortgage, whatever the mortgage payment is, until, let's say, the children are out of school or something. Once the children are out of school, then you can sell the house and divide the equity. But until that point, it's a risk. I mean, you as a spouse that's leaving the house, that's going to be living somewhere else, you don't get to kind of come back into the house unless you're nesting, which is another program. We can talk about that because that's a really interesting subject.
I would like that. We are running out of time, but that's a good topic.
Yeah. But when you're just sort of like letting the spouse, live in the house still, you have to really trust that person. Are they going to take care of the house? Are they going to be maintaining the house? Is it going to be the exact same it is when you left the house? Who's going to be fixing everything? This is all mediation. Like, what if the washer breaks down? Who's actually responsible for this? This has to be in black and white, very, very clear, because arguments and bitterness can happen. What if your spouse goes and gets remarried all of a sudden? Then there's all of these different emotions that come into it. So when you have a house that you're actually kind of still owning together, you have also got a life that you have to look at that you're owning together. Yeah. And that could become a problem. But some people can do it, and that's great. Tip my hat to that. But personally, in my divorce, no way. Absolutely none.
It usually is the people that are amicable, that are still getting along, because or that have the money to afford to be able to keep that. Because let's say a husband were to move out and the wife and the children are staying in the house. If he gets an apartment, that's fine and well. But if he chooses to buy his own house, he still has this $300,000 house on his credit. Right. And while the mortgage may be getting paid, it still shows up in his credit report and limits him from making. So it's really people, like you said, that trust each other, that aren't trying to hurt each other, looking out for the children maybe more than their own best interest.
And as a mediator, I'm sure you're the one that's sort of going to guide them into that.
I do. I become both their best friend and their worst enemy.
And you can figure out when you meet people, like, how do they look at each other? Are they looking at each other like they want to slice each other's throat, or do they still have respect for each other? Right. If people have respect for each other, it's great.
And it's my job to make sure that they do maintain respect through the process.
Exactly.
And that they can see both sides of it. Right. Or even just to point out, you can spend tens of thousands of dollars fighting over this $200. Is it worth it?
Right.
When you're caught up in the emotions, they don't necessarily see decisions like that.
Exactly.
It's all emotional. So that is one thing I love about working with couples. I'm so excited that you came today,
Thank
Sarah.
You for having me, Gail.
I can't believe how quickly this half hour went, because there's so many things I still wanted to talk to you about. But let's quick shut it down for this week and have you back another time. Yes. I would love it if you'd share your contact information with our listeners.
Yes, so my name is Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, Marchand, M-A-R-C-H-A-N-D. I work for Berkshire Hathaway, and my phone number is 770-712-2753. Once again, that's 770-712-2753. So if you have any real estate needs, give me a call. Thank you.
Thank you. And as always, you can reach me, Gail, G-A-I-L, at Blue Skies Mediation. And for those of you driving that can't remember that, you can just write me at Gail at lesssuckydivorce.com. You can also find my Facebook page, and I'll have Sarah's information listed there. So if you weren't able to write her number down, because it's not as easy to remember as Less Sucky Divorce, just reach out to me and I'll make sure I get you in touch with Sarah. And we look forward to having her back another time. And enjoy your day and have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye. I'm Gail Nankervis, your host of the Less Sucky Divorce radio show. And I'm the owner of Blue Skies Mediation in Peachtree City. I help people get a less sucky divorce. Not you, but maybe your neighbor or friend or sister. I'm a certified divorce financial analyst and a licensed family mediator, and I use these skills with my clients to help them get a professional divorce without escalating fees and emotions. My goal is to help them get through the divorce process while retaining their sanity, their assets, and most importantly, their integrity.
Are you interested in learning how great companies grow? Then download the Martech Podcast. The Martech Podcast tells the stories of real-world marketers who use technology to generate growth and achieve business and career success.
From advertising to software as a service to data.
Getting brands authentically integrated into content performs better than TV advertising.
Typical lifespan of an article is about 24 to 36 hours.
If we're reaching out to the right person with the right message and a clear call to action, then it's just a matter of timing.
Ready to learn the secrets of technology-driven marketing? Then download the Martech Podcast. Just search Martech, M-A-R-T-E-C-H, wherever you download your podcasts.
On land, Dad belting out classic rock using his flip-flop for a mic with intermittent air guitaring would be described as so embarrassing. Dad, and I just can't.
Oh, yeah!
However, on a boat, it's just Dad being Dad and actually sort of funny.
Rockin' on the boat!
That's why it's crucial Dad saved by bundling his boat insurance with Geico. Savings means more gas money and boating out on the water. The place where Dad is actually sort of funny.
Thank you, Lake Hamilton!
Geico for your boat. Bundle and save even more.